Hello, hello. Welcome to Healthy Perspectives, a podcast that takes on current cultural and social issues through a clinical lens. Hello, hello. All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we appreciate your time. And your tip of the day today is empathy is the key, and empathy is not boundaryless. Empathy is the key, and it is not boundaryless. I have been processing for a few days exactly how to approach this recent conversation that was had in the Oval Office. I had a buddy last week who said, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about it. And I contemplated skipping it because as a podcast that is designed to address current cultural topics, there's so many other options out there that are a lot easier to address right now. And then I said, wait a second, we address hard topics. That's what we do. So to dodge this one is a mistake because this is a hard topic for many reasons. This is a hard topic. It's because it's global and it's local. It's both. However, I needed to stay true to who I am as a clinician, as a counselor, as a non-political program that I'm putting together here. This is not a political agenda that I have. I have the agenda of helping people in their life through addressing current cultural issues and saying, what can we do psychologically, sociologically, and culturally to make this different? And remembering that that always means we start with the individual. So Zelenskyy shows up in the Oval Office and they're doing a press conference. And most of you are up to speed on what you think you know. But what I have also noticed is that most people I am encountering on this are using what is called confirmation bias. This was a 49-minute exchange, of which most of you have probably only seen 5 minutes max. And that's a problem. So today, you heard the tip, but let me be clear. This is an old school approach that I've used in the past. I'm going to point out if you're the problem. And if you've only seen 5 minutes and you're passing judgment, you might be the problem. I know people don't have the time to watch all of these things in their entirety every time. But this one should be watched in its entirety. So without further ado, I am going to share with you some major takeaways that I have from it. If you are following along on Rumble or YouTube, you're going to get to see some of this, not just hear it. If you are not following along on Rumble or YouTube, you will get to hear it and you won't get to see it. But seeing it definitely at times makes a difference. So here we are, 2 minutes and 7 seconds into this 49-minute, 47-second ordeal. 2 minutes and 7 seconds in. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to show you a clip. This particular clip is less than a minute, but it's a very important early clip in the scenario of empathizing with everybody involved. Okay. Very important. And remember, when I do the You're the Problem segments, it's all about empathy, folks.
I give tremendous credit to your generals and your soldiers and yourself in the sense that it's been very hard fighting, very tough fighting. They're great fighters. And you have to be very proud of them from that standpoint. But now we want to get it over with. It's enough, right? We want to get it over with. So it's an honor to have you here. Thank you very much for coming. We're going to sign the agreement at the conference in the East Room in a little while, right after lunch. And we'll be having lunch together. We're also discussing some other things. And we appreciate everybody being here. It's somewhat of an exciting moment, but the really exciting moment is when we get when they stop the shooting and we end up with a deal. And I think we're fairly close to getting that, and an honor to have you. And please, I'd like to say something.
No, thank you so much, Mr. President.
For this particular moment, I want to pause here because it's really important that you understand the stage here that's being set is very, very clear. They had a conversation before this in the Oval Office. There was already nearly an agreement to sign. So when I show up and I have an agreement, say a boundary or an expectation, some sort of a business deal or personal, I say, hey, I'm not for being yelled at. And then you proceed to yell at me. That would be a problem, right? Because I set the boundary and you didn't follow it. If I come in with some sort of an expectation, relational expectation, the agenda here means we know that there's been conversation and there should be follow through with that. In this first exchange right here that we saw, one of the things that I want to point to is the President of the United States is doing the diplomatic thing. Hey, it's a hard fought war. We've lost a lot of lives. We, meaning you, have lost a lot of lives. And it's really time for this to come to an end, right? It's not at all costs it must end, but it is time for it to end. It's not going to get better until the killing stops. Okay, so that's a pretty clear, and let's be real, it's a reasonable tone. Reasonable, why? Because saving lives matters, right? Come on. Not rocket science here. So let's empathize with what was going on there. President Trump is trying to set the tone of let's come to an end. Let's stop the death and the destruction. And let's figure out what that's going to cost. And if it's reasonable, let's do it. Okay. Then we get the response. I wanted to stop there because a lot of people are not seeing the humanity in the president's approach because they're just blind with Trump derangement syndrome, which I have done podcasts on in the past. You're welcome to go and look at them. Now we get to see Zelensky's response.
Thank you for the invitation. And really, I hope that this first document will be a first step to real security guarantees for Ukraine, our people, our children. I really count on it. And of course, we count that America will not stop support. Really, for us, it's very important to support and to continue it. I want to discuss it with details further during our conversation, and of course, the infrastructure or security guarantees. Because for today, I understand what Europe is ready to do. And of course, I want to discuss with you what the United States will be ready to do. And I really count on your strong position to stop Putin. And you said that enough with the war. I think that is very important, Ben, to say these words to Putin at the very beginning of war, because he is a killer and terrorist. But I hope that together we can stop him. But for us, it's very important to, to save our country, our values, our freedom and democracy, and of course, no compromises with the killer about our territories. But it will be later, and of course.
All right, folks. We have here a man who is trying to show strength. He wants security for his nation. That seems reasonable. Safety and security for his nation. And then he goes on this rant about Putin being the killer. Now, Putin is killing lots of people. And so is Zelenskyy. It's a war, folks. For those of you who've never served in the military, war is ugly, always. Now, we can go back and we can look at why the war started and who's most at fault. But getting into a pissing match like that is good for exactly nobody. Zero people are going to benefit from having some kind of a pissing match in a war. So, compromise is hard. Compromise sucks. It's really, really cruddy. And compromise is the name of the game. There has to be compromise. It's not optional in a wartime situation. It's just not. So let's empathize. I can empathize with Zelenskyy. I can empathize with the Ukrainian people. They are under attack. Facts. I can empathize with Donald Trump sitting there and saying, we haven't signed a deal. What are you doing propagating this stuff and talking harshly? We're supposed to be diplomatic here. If I'm being honest, I think the president of the United States in this particular scenario stayed very calm and relaxed in this moment. Very calm. Because he is not a dumb guy, contrary to what a lot of people seem to think, and a lot meaning like, I don't know, 35% of the country or whatever. He's not a dumb man. He can see the propaganda nature of what's going on here. And do I blame Zelenskyy for that? No, not at all. Why wouldn't he want to promote his people and demean the enemy? It's war. The problem is, if I'm being real honest here, and if you can't see this next part, you are part of the problem. The problem is, on the global stage like this, to put down your enemy eliminates diplomatic opportunity. In other words, it encourages more killing. So, no offense to Zelenskyy, but he probably just cost 10,000 lives of Ukrainians with this little interchange right here. Because think about this, folks. I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying it is. In a wartime scenario, if you can pump up the morale of your enemy by calling them evil and telling them how awful they are, when they believe they're doing something that is just. I don't think you have to agree with that. I'm just telling you, you don't fight a war unless you think you are right. And so to come in and call them evil on the world stage, now, if you want to do it behind closed doors, by all means, you go right ahead and do that. But on the global stage like this, not a good move. And it probably cost him Ukrainian lives. And if you can't see that, folks, you're part of the problem. Okay. All right, hang in. We've got a long ways to go. I'm not going to do the whole thing, so we're going to skip ahead. It's, look, some of this stuff is going to be really hard for some of you to hear, like really, really hard. And I get it. I do. I get it. The problem is we can't ignore it. It's not one of those things that's just going to go away. So hang in there. We're gonna keep plugging away. This one we go up to 11 minutes into the exchange. And here is a really interesting, I think this to me is where that whole piece that we just saw, I can justify it empathetically, but this is where I think we start to see a real shift. Listen to this next 30 or so seconds. It's very intense, folks.
And really, we can help Europe because Europe really helped. President Trump said that they made less support, but they are our friends and they are our very supportive partners. They really gave a lot, Mr. President. They did.
They gave a lot, but they gave much less.
No.
Much less.
No. No.
No. Okay.
Okay, folks, did you hear it? This is where things began to shift. When you see them disagree openly right there, and then they tried to turn it into comedy, that wasn't funny. There was nothing about that exchange that was funny. Did you see the looks on their faces? They realized, particularly Zelenskyy realized, that he was going toe-to-toe with the president of the United States, in which he depends on. In the United States, we're going to get to this other scene later in this particular exchange that talks about the ocean, but let's be real. Setting the stage, the ocean is no longer the big barrier that it once was. It's just not. We're going to get to that. But before we do, I want to make this point. It's still something significant. The ocean creates warning, significant warning opportunities. So thinking about the map, where is Ukraine to where is Russia? Versus where is the United States to Ukraine or Russia or Europe or anything that's going on there. It's a long ways away, folks. Let's empathize with Zelenskyy there. He is right there, most likely trying to tell his friends, hey, friends, Europe, I see what you have done for us, and it is important. Now, I have the advantage of having waited a few days to put this out. And that means I have the advantage of knowing the timeline of things. Zelenskyy needed to do that, which I get why, but he needed to do that because timeline-wise, where was he going after he left the United States? He was going to Europe to say, hey, Europe, I got the USA. And that isn't what he ended up getting to say. That's a problem for Zelenskyy. That is a real problem for Zelenskyy. Not as big of a problem for the United States. But it is a problem for the United States too. Empathize with both sides. It's one of those things we have to pay attention to. They tried to turn it into a joke, into comedy, because they realized, wait a minute, we're both of us are walking on pretty sketchy territory here. That's important to note. That's really important to note. We can't dismiss that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go forward a little bit more in the video to another exchange that is also very, very important. And again, thinking empathy, just think empathy, folks. And some of this stuff is going to come real super clear, and it really should come really clear. So take a look at this.
Yes. And Putin, the president speaks about the people and the soldiers which are dying, but they came to our territory, they came to our land. They began this war, and they have to stop. And I think this is the question, with really the most important question. Can President Trump, I hope yes, with some other allies, to stop Putin, withdraw these enemies, our enemy, withdraw these troops from our land? And I think that you asked about the history, I think that if President, or when he will stop Putin, if President Trump will bring peace to our country, I think he will be on this wall in time.
We've had very, very good talks.
He will be on this wall. Let's start with the last part first, because it's really interesting to me. Zelenskyy is appealing to Donald Trump's ego. He will be on this wall. They had, right before this, within a few minutes of this, there was an exchange about how Trump measures up to George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, and all these other presidents. And it was another opportunity for some comedy, which both of them were fine jumping into. It wasn't an important exchange in terms of the overall development of this, so I didn't put it in. But at the beginning of this clip, Zelenskyy talks specifically about the invasion of our land, and he needs to go back. War has compromise. Let's empathize for a second. Okay, hang with me. If that is the hang up, if that's what he's going to get hung up on, which I get, right? I get it. Then the argument, the easy argument for Putin is, well, that was my land, and you and some others have taken it historically. Now we get into this battle of, well, whose was it to begin with? Every nation across the globe, all of them, have taken or had land taken. Now, I'm not saying that's right, folks, but let's empathize. If that is where we are going to stand in terms of the battle, it's going to be a loss. It's going to be a massive loss. Because right now, if the U.S. or the Europe or both back out from Ukraine, it becomes part of Russia. And then Poland has to wonder, what's next? Right? So let's empathize with all these people. We have to stop arguing the parts that, look, this is a hard way to look at it, but hang with me, psychologically speaking. If I'm out in the wilderness all by myself, just me, and I get hurt really bad, injured, And the option is I got to cut off my arm. I'm going to lose that piece of territory in order to save the body. Or I can just lay there and bleed out and die. Where's the decision? Right now, like, this is graphic and I apologize for that in some ways, but we're talking about war, folks. So if this is too much for you, just turn it off. In a war, you're asking those questions all the time. War is ugly. War is amputating a part to save the whole. War is negotiating on things we don't want to negotiate on. War is ugly. And he's acting like a child in so many ways. Give me back what's mine. Mine, 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 mine. We have to think beyond that at this point, because he's got a severed arm and he's stuck. He's gonna have to do something different, but he's sticking to the same line. I'm gonna be honest, empathizing with him, I can do. I can understand why we don't want to lose our arm. I'm so used to having that arm. But in a wartime scenario, you have to say, is the arm worth the whole entire life? Sometimes the answer is no. And he's not willing to do that. So I can empathize with him. I can understand the internal emotional pull. And he really does need to figure that part out. And if you can't see that, folks, you're part of the problem. You listening to me right now, you are part of the problem if you can't see that. That is just not okay. You have got to open your eyes and see that this is ugly. Look, just because it's not here doesn't mean it's not part of our reality in some way. It is part of our reality. Because war, look, if we end up in World War III, which some people are saying it could happen, then it's at our door. And if we're not unified in that, at that point, if we're a split nation, some people are like, I'm not in a favor of defending ourselves. Because let's be real. If I'm empathizing with you, the citizens of the United States that are probably listening to this, then it's a big miss. If it comes to your door, you're going to wish we had a better response here in this situation. That's a truth too. And if you can't see that, you also might be part of the problem. Oh, but I got my 2A rights. I'm going to defend my house. Yeah, great. Against what? Drones and missiles? Airplanes? Hey, folks, war is ugly. We want to make sure it's not here. Don't get naive and boastful. The ocean is a barrier, and it's not that big of a barrier anymore. We got lots of things that can fly over the ocean or crawl under the ocean. That's a fact. Okay, for those of you following along, next clip is going to be it's going to be interesting. I think the way I interpret this one is this is an attempt to save the meeting. This is a really good, I think, attempt to try to save the meeting and say, hey, let's keep this kosher. Let's get ourselves into a position where we can do some things.
I mean, I hope I'm going to be remembered as a peacemaker. This would be a great thing if we could do this. I'm doing this to save lives more than anything else. Second is to save a lot of money, but I consider that to be far less important. So I hope I'm going to thank you, Brian, for that question.
I strongly believe that was an attempt to reset the conversation. Now, I don't know. Brian was one of the people in in the Oval Office, so some kind of a question had just come from Brian, and we saw right there the heart of the president of the United States in that moment. The heart of the president was to create peace. That was it. Nothing more. I want peace. I want death to stop. Secondarily, let's figure out the money situation. That was secondary. He even specifically said it's secondary. This has become, the next clip I'm going to show you real quick, has become a little bit of a conversation piece for some people who have watched the entire thing. You probably saw this. I'm going to show it just for posterity.
My second question for President Zelenskyy: why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest. Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office, and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
Yeah, problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not respecting the dignity of this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe one.
Maybe something
like yours.
Sir.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. Yeah. We will see. Maybe something cheaper than. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Interesting exchange. Let's empathize. First of all, let's empathize with the reporter who said, "Why aren't you wearing a suit? Why aren't you respecting the Oval Office and the President of the United States with, the dress, the attire?" Look, historically, people have worn uniforms or suits or dress uniforms or whatever for various reasons. There's always a reason. And let there be no mistake here. Zelenskyy is wearing his costume. He said, "I will wear a costume when the war is over," but he's wearing his costume. His costume is designed to send a message, and it makes sense. So why the reporter would pick on it? I mean, okay, whatever. Reporters do what reporters do. But at the end of the day, he's wearing his costume that sends a message. I am not going to dress in a dress outfit until the war is over. That's what he's saying with his clothing. He is speaking with his attire. And what I think is ironic here is that he says that he would wear a costume when the war is over, but he's wearing a costume, folks. I mean, we can empathize with him and understand why he's doing it. It makes sense, but also I'm going to empathize with the people who had to listen to that. He wearing the costume that he's wearing is intentional. It is 100% intentional. And to state otherwise is really arrogant and rude to all the people who are not blind and stupid, which most of us are not blind and stupid. And so it's kind of rude to you and to me. So keep that in mind when you hear this conversation about the costume or the suit or whatever it is. It's there you go. That's how I'm going to leave that. All right, folks. The next clip, super interesting, in my opinion. We've got a picture of reality that comes out of this meeting. Here is a very clear picture of reality. I'm having to adjust my timestamp because it switched on me.
Very quickly.
Does that still provide security guarantees, Mr. President?
I don't want to talk about security yet because I want to get the deal done. You fall into the same trap like everybody else. A million times you say it over and over. I want to get the deal done. Security is so easy. That's about 2% of the problem. I'm not worried about security. I'm worried about getting the deal done. The security is the easy part. Security is very nice. Everybody stopped shooting. And now will Europe put people there? I know France is going to. I know the UK is going to. I know other countries are going to, and they happen to be right next door. We haven't committed, but we could conceivably. We have security in a different form. We'll have workers there digging, taking the...
Okay, folks. The idea of security. This is actually really important to me because look, everybody in a non-war situation, people deserve to have honest, safe locations to be. Now, the reality, not everybody has a safe place to be. That is true. And in Ukraine, if the war stops and they are able to start to rebuild some things, it would put people there. Yeah, the president of the United States in this particular moment is very accurate. If we're empathizing with Ukraine, Zelensky focuses a lot on security because he's terrified of Putin coming and taking more, which makes sense. He should be scared because Putin's army is much stronger than Zelensky's army. You can hate me for saying it, but it's also true. Putin's army is not stronger than Ukrainian army with support of the France, other European countries, and the United States. But it is if it's just Ukraine and Russia. It's 100% like no brainer. We know where that's going to end. And it's not going to work for Zelensky and his people, which I'm not saying it's right. It's just real. And we have to be based in reality in order to empathize in a way that's actually useful. Attempt to see the world as if you're them. I understand why Zelensky wants all of that land. I understand why he wants security. He's under attack right now. Of course he wants somebody to stand there, somebody bigger and badder and stronger to say, come and save me. But the problem with this right now is it does make him look weak if he over focuses on security, which throughout this meeting, unfortunately, he did quite a bit of. Doesn't mean I don't get why. It just means if you're going to empathize, you got to do it from a place of reality. Okay. So we're going to go through and see where that exchange becomes a bigger thing, because it does. It becomes a much bigger thing here momentarily. I'm going to get you there. It fast forwards just a few minutes because they get caught up in some other stuff. But pay attention to this particular exchange to see where that security conversation goes.
Security guarantees. When the Europeans are ready for contingents, they need USA backstop. If there will not be United States, we will not never have any contingents, strong contingents from the Europeans, because they don't want to divide alliance, connection between the United States and the main and strongest ally and Europeans. And this is crucial, this is important. That's what we want to speak about very much. This is very important. And air defense. So air defense, really, we have big deficit with all these systems, and we need to provide this. We need it very much. Otherwise, Putin will never stop, and will go further and further. He doesn't want. He hates us.
That last piece I'm going to hit first. But Putin does hate the Ukrainian people right now for resisting. He does. He's right. But Zelensky made a really significant error in judgment, in my opinion, as an outsider looking at this as accurately as I possibly can. He made a huge mistake. He's coming to the United States first. And he's saying to the United States, you just need to be the backstop. The problem is he's also simultaneously saying that Europe, if you're the backstop, will then be willing to do more. Except it's been exactly the opposite of that. That is distortion like nobody's business. The United States has been the front part of this whole thing, not the backstop. And what we've been hearing is President Trump, and this is what we've heard. He doesn't want to be the front. He wants to be the backstop. Okay, so they should be on the same page. But here's the mistake. When I think about it, when I'm empathizing with everybody involved, what do you immediately see? Zelensky came to the United States first before going to Europe. That's backwards. He should have done it the other way around. He should have gone to Europe and said, what are you willing to do? Because this affects you much more. And then I'll get the backstop in place. You don't go to your backup and say, hey, come out, be strong and be in defense of us and support us and give us money and give us weapons and do all of this stuff. Oh, and then I'm going to go ask for more afterwards. No, you go to the backup as a backup. And if you're empathizing with anybody in the United States right now, that's an obvious no-brainer, should have been done. He did it in the wrong order. Now, I understand why he did it. He probably was told, go get the US. And he was probably told that by places like France and other European countries. Poland, hey, get the US. We want the US, the US, the US, the US. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to go get the US. That's fine. No problem with that. Let's say that happened, which it probably did. Then you don't come in and try to be a bull. You come in and you say, hey, look, you're just the backstop. Here's what we could use from you. And if you're willing to do that, here's what we're willing to do for you. And you just make it purely transactional. Simple, simple. However, that is not what's going on here. And you're going to see that. You have seen that in a lot of things. And one of these is coming up here just a few minutes later at 29 minutes in. He does this really weird thing that he should not have done.
But we have put in far more than they have. And I think they should equalize.
Mr. President,
Please, go ahead.
ask you about the agreement again today. What changed between the first time that Secretary Bessent gave President Zelensky the agreement and today for the signing?
We made a deal. So
What was the deciding factor?
I'm a business person. We made a deal. That's what changed.
Along with mineral-
I didn't think we were going to make a deal. And we ended up making the deal, so that changed.
Mr. President, what and how do you envision a trilateral summit with President Zelensky and Putin?
I don't know,
under
but
these
well, they
circumstances?
don't like each other. I can tell you that. Okay? They do not like each other. This is not a love match, and it's unfortunate. That's why you're in this situation. The United States should not have allowed this to happen. Okay? The United States, run by a man that didn't know much. I'm going to be very nice. Run by an incompetent person, very incompetent person, should never have allowed this to happen. I've stopped wars. I've stopped many wars. My people will tell you, I stopped wars that nobody ever heard about. I stopped wars before they ever started. You can look at some of, I could give you a lot of nations that would tell you right now they were probably going to war. I could tell you right now there's a nation thinking about going to war on something that nobody in this room.
Did you all see the look in Zelensky's eyes when President Trump was saying he stopped a lot of wars, that a lot of nations would stand up and be willing to say that? Zelensky was mocking him. Bad idea. It's just a bad idea. You're a guest in his house. Wouldn't recommend that. Look at that smirk. For those of you on Rumble and YouTube, and you can see his smirk. He's still like, oh, this is a joke. And he's probably getting himself a little bit worked up inside because of what happens here momentarily.
Room has ever even heard about. Two smaller nations, but big, still big. And I think I've stopped it. But this should have never happened.
Mr. President?
Sorry, just a second. About any negotiations. First of all, I want really to tell you, and I think that everybody understands that Ukraine, more than Ukrainians, nobody wants to stop this war. But at the future, any negotiations, it's understandable that two sides of the war not Russia and the United States, because this is not the war between Russia and the United States. This is war of Russia against Ukraine and Ukrainian people. So these two sides will be at the anyway will be at the negotiation table. Then of course United States, like the strongest partner of the Ukraine, and of course Europe. I think Europe is very important. I want to speak about it with the president. Yes, Europe is very important for us because we really defend Europe for today. All Europeans really recognize that we are defending the line, and they have real life, and our people are dying. That's why they helped us. And also, it's about the need. Yes, between, like the president said, you have big, nice ocean. Yes, between us. But if we will not stay, Russia will go further to Baltics and to Poland, by the way. But first to the Baltics. It's understandable for them because they've been in the USSR. You know, they've been one of the republics of the USSR, and Putin wants to bring them back to his empire. It's a fact. And when he will go there, if we will not stay, you will fight. Your American soldiers, it doesn't matter, do you have ocean or not, your soldiers will fight.
Mr. President, would you be willing to visit Ukraine, maybe Kyiv or Odessa?
This is the beginning. That may have been the most important exchange in the Oval Office. This is where it flips. This is where Donald Trump is being told the war is coming to your door if you don't give to us. Because, and he called the United States the most important ally. Again, another incongruence. I will empathize with him. I mean, this is a lot of pressure for a guy who was a comedian just a few years back. It really is. It's a lot of pressure. And for a guy who, frankly, is not even a president of Ukraine in all reality, because they canceled the elections. Like, we know these things. That being said, right now, him and the Ukrainian people are under attack, and that all makes sense. And right there, he started to talk about the ocean. And he said, they're just going to jump the ocean. He's more or less saying that Putin is just going to go and go and go. He's going to get us, and then he's going to get our number one ally, the United States, although he has not been acting as though that's the case. And then he's going to get our number two ally with Europe. And, you know, he's not acting like, you know, they're the number two at all. He's acting like they're the number one, which frankly they should be if we're empathizing with all parties, because the war is at their door. And then he goes on from there. And most of you have probably seen the big clip that comes up shortly after that between, and by the way, you're catching the very, very last part when you see the final exchange. And so with this, I'm going to do this a little bit different the next few minutes. You've all seen this exchange, but hang in there with me, because I'm going to give you a little bit of plot line behind the scenes psychologically. I'm going to empathize, and I'm going to read body language and stuff like that. So hang in there. Let's go for a quick little ride. This is the stuff that most of you who have seen the 5 minutes, this is what you've seen. But understand, it has crescendoed. This is a crescendo of we're with you, we're not with you, we're with you, we're not with you, we're with you, we're not with you, we're together, we're not together, we're together, we're not together. And then we have this exchange.
And then say, hi, Vladimir, how are we doing on the deal? That doesn't work that way. I'm not aligned with Putin. I'm not aligned with anybody. I'm aligned with the United States of America. And for the good of the world, I'm aligned with the world. And I want to get this thing over with. You see the hatred he's got for Putin. It's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred. And I understand that, but I can tell you the other side isn't exactly in love with, you know, him either.
So that was very good empathy from Donald Trump. President Trump right there is empathizing with Russia and Ukraine. Very good.
So It's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
Hey, I will respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the President of the United States' words mattered more than the President of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask?
So, folks, this was a really interesting piece to me because it's dead on. When we look at historically what has been occurring the last 4.5 years or thereabouts, 4 years, whatever it's been, it's right around there. The issue is, in the United States, we did thump our chest and send money and weapons. And all that has done is severed a part of Ukraine to Putin. It has been ineffective. And empathizing with the people of the United States, are we going to get involved in an endless war? Folks, we've done that before. Think back to Vietnam. It didn't go over very well.
Ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied it, our parts, big parts of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
So, folks, we just got a little bit of a history lesson on this. Good-ish. I mean, look, we've all been around, but unfortunately here, if we're empathizing with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and the current administration, they had 4 years in there in which they had the ability to keep peace, and frankly, they did. They were able to keep the peace from 2016 to 2020. By peace, meaning there was no further expansion. The occupation that he's talking about was right there at the door and whatnot. But peace was attained for those 4 years. So if we're empathizing with this current administration, they're probably thinking, I didn't really cause that, right? And to Zelenskyy, he's treating the United States as though there's not changes of patterns and direction when there's a change of administration. Folks, your vote matters. You changed the direction based on your vote. That's where we are right now.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly
but-
right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022, yeah, the situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire. All of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners.
Okay. my heart goes out to Zelensky and the Ukrainian people in this particular moment, because he's right. In 2019, there was a signed deal where he's making an error in judgment here, if I'm being real, is in 2020, there was a new president who decided to fund the war, but did not have the strength to back it up in the ways necessary to stop the fight. And there's a big difference. So when that contract was signed, that agreement was come to in 2019, Putin had President Trump to deal with. By 2020, he didn't. So the backstop disappeared. Now, unfortunately, it's a misread of information. It's a misread because Zelensky thinks that the money and the weapons is the thing that's driving Putin to his knees. That will not happen. That will not be what drives him to his knees. Allies, Ukrainian allies, is what will drive Putin to his knees. Now, Putin and all the Russian folks will probably not like that I said that. My great Granny Annie might not appreciate that I said that. And at the same time, it's reality. If the United States and Europe does not stick together in this, if Europe does not take the front seat alongside of Ukraine, and the United States come and sit in the back seat as a hey, your Uncle Trump over here is ready to wallop you if you go against all of our allies. Well, then maybe Putin would have some desire to stop. But that's not what's happening here. Folks, he's making the case that he's playing this all wrong. And I can empathize with him. Fog of war is real. It's real. He can only see what he can see. And unfortunately, he's not seeing this part very well. And yet, he's still got all of his people dying, and he needs to do something. I appreciate that he's trying to do something. If you're not able to see that too, any of these parts that I just described, you're part of the problem.
He signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect,
The destruction of your country. JD Vance right there is talking about sever the arm, save the body. He's just doing it in a diplomatic way.
I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine? Did you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring people.
Did you all, for those of you on Rumble and YouTube, did you all see Zelensky is shaking his head? He is shaking his head. He look, you know what? The rest of this exchange, you've all seen it, heard it, whatever. This is where it implodes. Because at this point, Zelensky is committed to his pathway of being disrespectful. Okay, I get it. She started going down that path, and it's like, how do you change this now? But he didn't. He didn't change it. So, if I'm empathizing with him, hey, I mean, good on you for staying true to what you think you know. I mean, that's good. Stand for something, or you'll fall for anything, right? And you got to be aware that there are blind spots. There are blind spots. So the advantage here is Trump and JD Vance and Marco Rubio now are all involved, which it means there's less blind spots in the room. frankly, for the United States in that moment. Zelensky had this exchange again here pretty quick where his advisor or whatever is head down, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening. Like, this is a disaster. And so we've all seen those things. And of course, look, hey, I'm not expecting perfection. I'm not expecting perfection. I'm going to be honest. I've heard Zelensky several times since this exchange happened over the last several days. And, he's half-heartedly trying to be grateful and apologize. In some cases, sounds pretty sincere. I think he realizes that he did some damage and he needs to clean some things up. I also think, if we're looking at this from a perspective, all three of these men in this room, and Marco Rubio and probably others, there's a lot of egos in this room. Let's be real. And if you can't see that, you're part of the problem for sure. Donald Trump has an ego. Zelensky, big ego. JD Vance, big ego. Ego is not necessarily a problem, but it can be. In this particular situation, it was a problem. Yeah, it definitely changed things. There's a lot of things in here that I could expand on, but let's get concise here for a moment. There are a lot of problems that occurred in this exchange. They started back at 2 minutes and 7 seconds in when they talked about the deal. They began to talk about the deal, and it wasn't finalized. There was no final deal. And so all of this was a hypothetical. And so they did litigate in front of the media. And with diplomacy, that could be a good idea or not such a great idea. Right now, that gives the advantage, unfortunately, to the United States, to Donald Trump, to JD Vance, because in litigating it in the open public, everybody got to see how the diplomacy was being followed until 39 minutes in on the United States side, and that it was being used as propaganda and litigation on the Ukrainian side with Zelensky. Now, I don't know how the Ukrainian people feel specifically, but my heart goes out to them because Zelensky probably cost them some lives. And that's sad to me. As a person who is on the side of this is right now looking like an endless war and a potential start to a World War III. I hope it doesn't. I hope neither of these play out. But an endless war is not what we need over there, and a World War III is definitely not what we need anywhere. And as somebody sitting on the outside looking in right now, my heart aches for the Ukrainian people because they're at the literal front line of either an endless war or World War III, which means those lives are going first, no matter how you play it. Unless something changes, Ukraine is not going to be Ukraine. The Ukrainian people are more or less going to be obliterated. And that sucks. That sucks. With my history of my grandfather serving in 3 wars, me and my brother both being in the military, understanding the how terrible war is just in general, this is not what I wanted to see. So, do I fear things? No. I have a higher power. I got God. But it is definitely getting my attention. Empathize, empathize, empathize. Folks, if you do that, you will not be part of the problem. If you don't do that, you are the problem. There are so many people out there picking this up and saying, confirm my bias. It confirmed my bias. It confirmed my bias. And I hate, hate, hate. That is the wrong message, folks. Hate is the wrong message. It cannot be the message. That is part of Zelensky's issue in these videos. His hate is interfering with his ability to understand he's about to lose his arm. And if he's not careful, he's going to die. Not literally, maybe, although maybe, right? I mean, he is part of the military there. So, at some point they want to come after the general. They want to get the guy at the top. Folks, empathize. It's not boundaryless, but empathize. I hope this was a helpful breakdown. I know it's more content than I usually do. I appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. We appreciate our audience a lot, so we give you some simple ways to track us down. Please like, subscribe, and follow all the podcasts on different platforms, but you can also email us at healthyperspectives@protonmail.com, or you can check out our website at healthy-perspectives.com/podcast. It's a backward slash. So if you want to go to our landing page, if you go to healthy-perspectives.com, you'll still find us. You just got to click on the podcast button. Thank you so much.